an authority on this particular issue, former alderman, school committee member, and state representative Pat Long, who is the author of the bill that actually began the process of putting together this charter commission. So we're going to spend the day talking about this charter commission, where it comes from, what it's trying to do.
Well, I see a couple of concerns that I have with the current system. One is that the fact that the state of New Hampshire established our charter, so they're tied into the city of Manchester's school district, and we need to go to ask for permission to get, for example, this school district becoming a division of the.
That basically, every couple of years, the school department comes to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, the governing body of the city, hat in hand.
Yep, that's every year.
Every year.
Every year.
And they give them a list. That's right. It's the state that does the biennial budgets. I'm getting a little bit confused on that. But so they come hat in hand. They say, we're going to need so much money, and this is where we think we'd like to allocate it. Can you give that money to us so we can run the schools?
Yeah.
And then the aldermen provide the money. Sometimes they give what is requested, sometimes a little less.
Yeah.
I don't know if they've ever given a little more, but maybe they have. So the problem really is kind of accountability. You always have this tension between the school board and the alderman, one with the purse strings, the other with the grocery list.
Correct.
And when folks aren't feeling like they're getting what they need out of the school district can simply point to the alderman and say, well, they didn't give us what we needed.
That's correct. Yeah,
it's a scapegoat.
Yeah,
and they're not
it's
really
no accountability. There isn't. The bill that passed, it was signed by the governor last week, is to allow Manchester to set up the Board of Mayor and Aldermen have the authority to set up charter commissions, but not when it comes to school districts. When it comes to a school district, it's tied into statutes in the state, so it's
There's
a little different
whole
process.
series of statutes dealing with how districts are set up, how they're run. The SB2 districts are different from
Correct. So my bill allows us to set up a charter commission without the interference of the general court, meaning the state reps and the Senate and the governor. That this charter shall be set up, and they'll come up with policies of how to run a school district. I mean, it was done in 2011 with the Concord district. They were the same as Manchester, and they put in this same bill to break away from the state and set up their own. They call it the Board of Education, their Board of Education. And they set up how many school board representatives. They set up all the governance, who's going to be the chairman, how does that get elected. And the difference between this and a department would be under the city of Manchester, under the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. So the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, primarily the mayor, would have the line item, setting the line item. So you're asking the alderman to not only be alderman, but to be school board
to
representatives.
actually write the budget and not to only
correct.
appropriate a lump sum, but to write the budget, where it's going to go, this much for teachers, this much for, and we have to concede, though, that there are a charter commission.
Correct.
How many members?
There'll be 9.
9 members.
Yep.
Now, do these people that are going to be on this charter commission, should we be looking at all principals and teachers to be on this charter commission? Is this something where educational expertise is going to be called upon, or is
I'm not.
Or is it government?
Educational expertise isn't what this is about. This is not setting policy with respect to our education in the school district. It's governance. It's purely governance. How will this entity, the school district, govern itself? And that's what it's about. It's not implementing any educational programs. It's simply governance to the school district, which is what the Board of School Committee, who knows what they're going to come up with.
Yeah.
These 9 representatives on this charter commission will review what we currently have. They'll set whatever policy they may want. Personally, I'm a strong believer in letting the school board come up with their budget and have control over that themselves instead of having to go to another entity to
Which is
get that.
elected people from the city with authority to make a recommendation, and then that recommendation is what would go to the voters
In
by way of
2020.
referendum in the next election. So,
That's correct.
so they'd have a year to work.
come up with a policy plan that's going to be reviewed by the voters. And in November of 2020, the voters will vote to approve or not approve this policy that they've come up with.
So regardless of what they come up with, the voters are going to have the final say.
That's correct. The bill requires the establishment of a charter commission to recommend a procedure to revise, amend, or replace the school district charter without legislative approval. So this breaks us away from legislative approval. It puts us on our own to decide what's in the best interest of Manchester School District.
A statute was passed allowing, they call it the home rule statute.
yeah.
It's not really home rule in the traditional sense like out west where they actually have home rule. But it does allow states to govern, cities and towns to govern their own charters.
Correct.
And so what your bill does, which has passed and been signed, is now Manchester has the authority to control its own school district charter.
That's
As
correct.
opposed to having the
correct.
remnant, because
Yeah.
Manchester, one of the oldest cities.
Because if you wanted to revise your charter, you would have to go get state legislative approval.
Yeah.
So you'd have to put a bill in, to do whatever you want to do and wait for their approval to do it.
So this allows us to decide here in Manchester what we want to do.
That's correct.
And the Charter Commission gets established, and it only lasts so long, right? Once
It lasts for less than a year, because I'm assuming that they'll get elected in November. And they'll have to have their policy in, I'm thinking by September, to get it out to the voters.
because there's an education process that you have to go
Correct, an
through before they
educational
elect it.
process, before they vote on it
Yeah.
in November.
So they will not decide anything. They're going to make a proposal.
They're gonna
That's
make a
that's the
proposal.
idea.
That's correct.
That's their only.
Yep.
And I guess you in the break you mentioned that a lot of people are asking, could they do this?
Correct.
Could they go out of control? I think is really the question
right.
people
I mean,
are
I
asking.
had some questions of people asking me, could they put in a $20,000 stipend for the school committee? They can, but it's not a reality.
Yeah, if they want their charter to pass,
you have to vote
they're
for
not
that.
going to put that in there.
Exactly.
Right?
You
Okay.
have to vote for that. I know in Concord, when they did that, they did give them the same stipend as their city councilors of long-term goals or long-term plans.
So-
that's correct. With school district, well, actually, this governing body now, if the voters in 2020 pass this, the governing body will be like the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, able to set up their own charter. So the school district,
Okay.
the school board will be able to set up their own charter commission if they want.
So
to
another
change some things.
home rule situation like
Correct.
we talked about earlier.
But
in the
they
show.
don't have to have permission from the legislator. All they have to do is get enough votes to set up a charter commission to look at the school district.